All right, before I get started, I just want to apologize for the lateness on the arrival of this one. Had some really bad technical difficulties while on the road yesterday, but I'm here now and we're going to crack on with the main card of Merab versus Piotr Yan. Now, after a really decent prelims and one of the craziest pull out of your ass finishes I've seen in a long time, and kind of sneaking in here by the skin of my ass with a 4-2 record, which could have easily been 3-3 with the split decision earlier in the card, and could have even been 2-4 if Grant didn't pull that out the bag. Anyway, 6 pretty good fights to get into here, and it was a really nice main card. Let's just get straight into this. Alright, now in the build up to this fight, a lot of interviewers were asking Turkaly what he thought of Petrino, what kind of opponent he thought he was facing, and Turkaly just kept, diverting the question like, listen, this guy is very good looking, but not quite as good looking as me. It was this kind of vibe, which was all very, very strange. Then he came out to sexy back. I can't decide if this guy's funny or an absolute lemon. Anyway, I picked Petrino, and before I get into this fight had one of the worst refereeing jobs I've ever seen in the cage. So Petrino took him down immediately with literally no resistance, and this did surprise me a little. But in all the Turkaly highlights I've seen, he often does get taken down early and go on to win, so I didn't really read too much into it. Petrino is predominantly a stand-up guy, and I didn't like that he was diverting away from that. They then had a really nice hug for 2 minutes, which culminated in Turkaly giving Petrino a little kiss on the cheek and then kneeing him right in the bollocks. I mean, this guy, I think he's a comedian. It ended up kind of being a silly move, though, as I felt like Petrino was gassing a little bit at that stage. He's clearly a fast muscle twitch kind of guy, and that 2 minutes he had trying to find his bollocks really gave him time to recover. And he used this recovery time to come out and go right at it again. He hit Turkaly with massive shots and ended the round on top. Now, as Petrino was going down for ground and pound, Turkaly did hit him with an up kick that hit him right on the jaw and really put him on wobbly legs. But I don't think this was enough to win the round. I had it clear 1 Petrino. To be honest, I didn't like this for him that it got to the end of the first and I picked him. So Petrino came out in round 2, hitting massive shots. He landed 2 lefts in particular, and then got another takedown. As odd as that was, I still kind of favored Turkaly at this stage, who really didn't look like he was gassing. He has no IQ, but I'll get to that. Just as I thought Turkaly was about to get the upper hand, there was a very sloppy exchange, and Petrino again got the back. And again, he looked pretty gassed. But what was really egregious throughout this round is literally in round 2, Turkaly must have grabbed the cage to avoid takedowns literally 5 times. And this time Mark Smith did absolutely nothing about it. The inconsistency was so frustrating to watch here. He should have had a point taken away. At least one at least. Despite this, I edged Petrino in the second, and I had him 2-0. It was utter chaos in there. But again, despite this, 2-0 to Petrino in my mind. But I still felt there was great danger coming from Turkaly, who seemed to have more of a gas tank. And at the beginning of the third round, Turkaly managed to get Petrino down and lock him into a body triangle. And I thought, all right, this is going to be where it turns. But Petrino's so athletic. He managed to weasel his way out, kind of turn his way out of it, which often you don't really see. When someone has a body triangle, you often don't see them escape in that manner. There were 2 more cage grabs by Turkaly that were complete. All Smith did was shout, "Stop grabbing the cage." There was no repercussions for it whatsoever. Fortunately, however, as somebody who picked Petrino, he did manage to get another takedown and finish. Sorry, he got a really big slam at the end of the round that I thought won him that round. This was a fun one, but the ref should be hanged or fired or whatever. Petrino got the UD round 1, and he got 10-8 with 2 of the judges, which kind of surprised me. This took me to 5-2. Nice fight. All right, fight 2. I'm going to make this as brief as the fight was. I picked Bautista. I know, very brave of me to pick a 10-1 favorite, but Cannetti is old and he calls himself Ninja. I thought he didn't have a shot, and I described this as an assassination job in my pick earlier on in the week. This fight was a waste of everyone's time. It got promoted to the main card after the Ramos fight was kicked off. after he had a horrible weight cut, which I didn't understand. Bautista threw him around and choked him out. It probably took longer than it should have. Bautista did land a nice suplex to set up the choke, but Cannetti didn't belong in there. I don't know what more to say. We learned nothing, we gained nothing, although I will take the 6-2 it brought me to as a freebie. Thanks very much. Bautista did call out Garbrandt, which he might actually get, and he might actually win. Let's get on to the real fights on this main card. Alright, this was a hell of a fight. Very technical. I really like Martinez, but he seemed like he was terrified in there to start out, and it took him a while to kind of ease into this. He really struggled with Saeed's length. Saeed mostly stayed at range and was allowed to work. He hit flowing kicks, a few that connected to the head, some to the body. He clearly felt confident and mixed in spinning strikes to keep Martinez guessing. And he did really well at times, Martinez did, to survive what were some very clean strikes. Martinez's corner at the midpoint started screaming at him to wake up, and he responded by trying to come in swinging, and he almost got caught and choked. Martinez did eventually ease into things more and relaxed, but he didn't land anything too significant for the rest of the round. Clear Saeed first round, but it did feel more like a fight at this stage. Now, early in the second, Nurmagomedov got clipped with a pretty hard shot, and it didn't look too significant at the time, but it seemed like it really messed up Saeed's nose and would be quite consequential for the rest of the fight. Not in the way that I thought, but certainly did change the tone a bit. Nurmagomedov got a takedown. It didn't really stay there long, and he was landing more clear strikes at the beginning. Martinez then decided to change tact, which I thought was really smart, and make it more of a clinch fight. He got in dirty, started hitting a few elbows and close strikes. Then Martinez spent some time pressing him against the cage. He wasn't terribly busy, so it made the round a bit hard to call. Saeed smartly did break, and he hit a few nice side kicks, and then landed one to the head, which I think had him edging it. Now, surprising to me, at the beginning of round 3, the live odds had Saeed as a minor underdog, which really shocked me, as I felt like he was 2 rounds up. Even if you had the second round close, the first round was clearly Saeed. I assume they felt it was because they felt Saeed was gassing off. It was weird to see that weasel Abdelaziz in the corner, by the way. He brings nothing to the table. He needs to fuck off and not get involved. I hate seeing that guy's face. Anyway, the fight felt anyone's at this point, even though I had it at 2-0 to Saeed. It was a really fortuitous start for Saeed in the third. It appeared as though Martinez slipped as Saeed hit through a right, but it may have been seen as a knockdown. Saeed got on top, and he almost got caught in a arm triangle, but he did really well to escape. Saeed then locked up the back with a triangle, and he found himself in a position that he could have seen the round out in. Now, this is where he kind of fucked up. Martinez did really well to force it up again, and he ended the fight with control against the cage. This was a close round, a close fight. I had it Saeed 3-0, but it was a great match. When they called UD, I was sure it was for Saeed. It was not. Now, I wouldn't go as far as to call this a robbery, but this is not one I agreed with. Maybe I was biased, I'll have to rewatch it. It did take me to 6-3. I felt Saeed won the fight. Very nice win for Martinez, though. He was very much in it. And I did have one horrible card this year where I went 7-5, and I was thinking this might start to feel like that with some difficult fights coming up, and I did take some risks later on down the card. Alright, now the commentary team and promo VDs were again building up the narrative that Spann has never trained really and is finally taking MMA seriously. I think I've said enough on this previously. I wanted this win almost as much as I wanted Yan to win the main event. Now, this fight started off explosively. Both men went straight into headhunting, and it looked like we would get the finish that was advertised. Krylov looked in danger early as Spann locked in a choke, but Krylov just seemed to relax and eventually slipped his head out. A lot of time was spent rolling around, transitioning, and this really favored Krylov. Spann has only been training for 8 weeks in his entire life, so I felt pretty good as they were rolling around. Now, Spann tried to get a roll through on a back take and got locked in a really simple leg triangle, and he tapped immediately. It occurred to me then that he was probably telling the truth this whole time. Spann basically has 2 minutes to take your head off, and if he doesn't do it, he's basically got nothing. Krylov schooled him, took me to 7-3. I still felt a little bit salty over the last fight, but we roll on. Spann should go to heavyweight where nobody can wrestle, and I think he'll then talk about how he's reinvented again, and we'll get a whole new VD about how he's finally in the division he should be in. All right, now I took a massive risk on this one in the co-main event, and I took the underdog in Volkov. This was a piece of cake. I told everyone that Romanov is terrible and had never fought anyone on this level. He lost to Tybura comprehensively, and then he gets Volkov, who is way better, and he's deemed as the favorite. I didn't understand it, and every analyst followed like sheep and picked him. Now, the first thing I noticed when they got in the cage is that Romanov had somehow got even fatter, which, quite the achievement. Fight starts, Romanov backed him up immediately into the cage. Mark Smith did let Volkov grab the cage to prevent the takedown. Another fantastic miss, and this kept it standing, so we'll never really know if it changed the outcome. I do accept that when Romanov does get things to the ground, he's very difficult to get up because he's just so fat and difficult to move, so it could have changed things. But once it was back standing, Romanov looked a bit shell-shocked, and Volkov immediately just started stabbing at the belly with those savage kicks as soon as they separated. I predicted this would happen. He kept going to the gut, and Romanov looked like he shit himself. I mean, to be fair, I probably would have as well. He clearly never taken a smack like that, and he just crumbled. Went down, shelled up. Volkov battered him on the ground for a minute before the ref stepped in. Took me to 8-3. Romanov is not that good, and I called it. Couldn't believe he was the favorite. Alright, now this is obviously the big one. I've obviously said some really mean things about Merab, the Goblin, and to be honest, if this was a pick based on who the better human was, I'd have wanted Merab to win. Piotr does seem like a bit of a cunt, but that's not my concern here. This wasn't my pick for who I'd go for a beer with. If Merab had won in style, I had promised a separate apology video, and I was definitely not up for that going into it. Now, the first round, Merab set a really nice pace, and the tone of the fight was basically Merab's cardio. He just kept going for takedowns at a rate of which I've never seen. Most of them were stuffed, but he clearly set the tone of how he wanted the fight to go. Jan hit a few nice leg kicks, but most notably was called for eye poking, and you felt that he was one more away from losing a point at any stage in the fight, and this made him kind of tentative with where he placed his hands. Merab then just ground the round into his style. Clear 1-0 for Merab, no dispute. Second round, again, very impressive for Merab. He really hurt Jan with a leg kick and was fighting aggressively and pushing forward. Jan looked shell-shocked and defensive. Merab was doing his game, winning the rounds. The best moment for Jan came when Merab went for a kick and Jan kind of grabbed the leg and swept him and managed to get on top. It didn't come to much. Jan did hit a nice body kick when they broke, but then instantly got taken down. At this point, I was writing the apology letter in my head. It was clear 2-0 to Merab, and he was looking great doing it. There was a stage at the end of the round where Jan ended up on top, but it was certainly not enough to win the round. Again, I have to say this, Merab's gas tank is bananas. This prick is relentless. He just kept the pressure up, and I didn't feel like Jan knew how to adjust and get his game going. It's a bitch way of fighting, I really believe, but I've got nothing but maximum respect because Jan is dangerous. By the midpoint in the third, Merab had already had 22 takedown attempts. 22, which is just insane. And he didn't look like he was showing any signs of slowing down. The round ended with a few shots exchanged, but even the most devout fans couldn't give him shit. Like, 3-0 Merab, pretty much. Fourth round started again, and this round irritated me a lot more. I was pretty satisfied with how Merab performed in the first three, and I don't blame him for this, but he resorted to what I really hate about him as a fighter. He pushed Jan to the cage, started kneeing the thigh, and Jan couldn't do anything about it. He really needed a finish, and I just couldn't see it. He did manage to reverse position, and he finally managed to get off a little bit of offense. But Jan was clearly wearing the damage, and if I'm a judge, I'm looking at that and thinking, another round down the drain, you know? Jan was more productive this round. He hit the better shots, but Merab was just swinging more, and even though he was clearly missing, he looked busier, and again, I could see a case for why the judges had it 4-0 at this point. Either way, going into the fifth, Jan needed a finish, and he looked just broken. We got to 6 on 36 takedowns at this point by the start of the fifth. I mean, I've never seen anything like that. And at the very start of the fifth round, Jan shot, and I just thought, it's over. Like, he's accepted that he can't do anything to this guy. Merab kept the pressure on hard and dominated the fifth. I'm going to have to eat some humble pie on this one here. Full credit to Merab. What a magnificent performance. The real trouble is, what do you do with him? You know, it's a difficult situation. He literally just went, I'm hungry at the end. Very bad impression. But like, yeah, he couldn't even come up with a name. Because he knows he's not going to get O'Malley now because he's next. There's no one else really for him to fight. So, honestly, I'm calling this now. I think what happens is, I think Aljo beats Cejudo. And then he basically says, I've done everything I need to do in the division. I'm going to leave the division now to my boyfriend Merab. And then he's going to head up to featherweight. And then they make the Merab versus Sean O'Malley fight at the end of summer. And I think Merab just humps him, beats him up. So I think I'm calling it now. I reckon by September, Merab Dvalishvili is going to be bantamweight champion, and I don't think there's anyone in the division that can do anything about it. Yan looked helpless in there, and he's probably the best of the rest. That's all I gotta say. Anyway, this ended me on the card 8-4. So, yeah, what can I say? I'm disappointed, but I did say if Merab put in a good performance, I'd eat some humble pie, and I will have to make that promised apology video, because in the first 3, he looked absolutely fantastic, and the 5th as well, to be fair. That 4th was fucking terrible, boring to watch, but don't blame him for doing it. I think he ended the fight with something like 50 takedown attempts. I mean, that's just inhuman. Alright, now this took me to an overall record in 2023 of 64-27. So I managed to maintain a win percentage of 70%, which we're in March, and to be over 70%, again, I've said this once, I'll say it again, you're not going to see that anywhere else. So anyway, I'll see everyone again on Monday, where I'll be doing the prelims of a card I'm very excited about. Obviously, everyone can tell I'm a Brit. I'm deeply excited to see Leon Edwards defend the belt against Kamaru Usman. Prelims will come tomorrow, main card on Tuesday. Thanks to everyone for liking and subscribing as always. And yeah, please keep that up, as it really does make a difference. See you all soon.